Hello, and welcome to the Londoner News. My name is Olivia Bottomley-Dakin.
And I'm Theo Berman. Coming up, we hear from the public about a controversial arms fair in Twickenham, we get the latest on the Richmond-upon-Thames Riverside development, and we discover whether classical music lunchtime concerts are on the rise across London.
First, a Twickenham arms fair has received criticism from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. The group have claimed an Israeli defence official attended the event. Our team spoke to residents in Twickenham to ask what they thought about the event, as well as a local representative of PSC.
Just outside Twickenham Stadium, where on Monday around 70 protesters gathered outside to express their anger and frustration towards the Rugby Football Union. The event has caused a lot of controversy with human rights groups and activists. We've tried to go into the event, but we have been denied permission to film inside the venue, unfortunately. We've spoken to a few protesters and we're going to speak to a human rights group shortly. The protesters were just gathered around here. There's been a lot of chalk and a lot of protesting down this stretch of road. I sat down with I.S. Harsam and we spoke about the Palestine Solidarity Campaign's protests on Monday and also what the likely impact of these protests are going to be, both in the immediate and the further future. So with the International Armoured Vehicles Fair, which is being held in Twickenham Stadium, how many members of your campaign have been involved in getting people together and organising the protests which first took place on Monday?
Yeah, so there's a local committee that organises these things, and it's about a 15 to 20 person strong committee. But in terms of involvement and engagement, obviously we got a lot more than that in terms of people actually engaging with it when they found out what was going on. But that was kind of the core organising group. But I should add that actually one of the things we did was it wasn't just the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. We got in touch with other groups who also didn't know what was going on. Strangely enough, not very many people knew that there was an armoured vehicles fair going on in the Twickenham Stadium, home of English rugby.
We just wanted to ask you if you knew that Twickenham Stadium is being used for an arms fair.
Yeah, I did actually. I think it was on Saturday where they were doing the demonstration there, so yeah, I was aware of it.
Yeah, how do you feel about it?
I'd say it's not something that we need. It's definitely for the cause they were talking about with Palestine, because my girlfriend's from Palestine.
Okay.
So when we're talking about kind of like what they're trying to present and what they're trying to, in this type of world that we are at the moment, I don't think it's the very best.
No, I did not. Right, what the fuck?
How do you feel about that?
That's a bit crazy, I can't lie.
Appalled. Looks what's happening in California in the last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Disgraceful.
One of the things that's most heinous about these arms fairs is that the companies that go there boast that their arms are quote unquote battle tested, and that's a part of their marketing is these things work. What does that actually mean? That means Israel has deployed them in one of its regular invasions of Gaza, killing civilians, killing children. They killed nearly 551 children to be exact, in one of these attacks in 2014. These are armoured vehicles where...
And you mentioned your connection with Palestine at the beginning of the interview. Do you still have family members or friends who live out, who are in Palestine, who are seeing the consequences of armed fairs like the one in Twickenham?
Absolutely, I do. And in fact, I also I run a small charity for Palestinian children, and I see a lot of when I was myself out in Gaza, and you see the impact of what happens here. You see children who you have this glass of water here. That sound would have children diving under a table with the trauma of reliving the experiences. I remember I was there when I was last there. The second day I went to visit the British cemetery in Gaza, and I walk out the cemetery, and an Israeli warplane comes overhead. Bombs probably about 3 blocks away. This was during the so-called peacetime, never gets reported. And looking in front of me were apartment blocks, and they were wailing. It almost sounded as if the walls were wailing with children that were in there that were traumatized by just this event. And just as worrying, about 50 yards ahead of me were a couple of kids, similar age to my own, probably 15, 16 years old, who did not flinch, as if being bombed was just the most natural thing in the world. So yes, I have relatives and friends who've seen it, but I've seen it firsthand. And that's seeing it where, the children aren't named. There is over 1/3 traumatized children, according to UNICEF in Gaza. That's a horrific number. And they are traumatized because of the consequences of the kinds of deals that start here in Twickenham Stadium. And I think that for me is the key point, is people need to be able to draw that line, that what gets talked about here, the deals that are struck here, end up in that kind of thing happening. It's not some remote, conference where, the industry is just getting together and having lovely discussions. They end in death, in destruction, in trauma.
In response to these allegations, a spokesperson for the Rugby Football Union said, "We host many successful private events throughout the year at Twickenham Stadium. As a host, we are politically neutral and our main priority is to ensure that all events are safe and secure for both clients and local residents. The organisers of the conference work closely with the British Army and other NATO armed forces to ensure the event provides a forum to allow them to share best practice and knowledge to assist in deterring threats to security."
Thank you, team, for bringing us the latest on the arms fair.
Next up, plans put forward by Richmond upon Thames Council on Monday to carry out Riverside refurbishment has proven to be controversial. The current plan is to build on top of Twickenham's Diamond Jubilee Gardens, a site currently used by local nurseries. Campaigners also fear it could restrict access to Eel Pie Island. Our reporters spoke to those on both sides of the debate, leader of Richmond upon Thames Borough Council Gareth Roberts and the Twickenham Riverside Trust.
Richmond Council recently approved the funds to deliver the Twickenham Riverside redevelopment. The council say the new development will include shops, a cafe, a restaurant and pub, offices for people to work and lots of open space for people to enjoy. 3,000 people signed a petition in favour of the development taking place, while 2,500 signed a counter petition against it happening, partially because they worry that access to Eel Pie Island may be restricted and that the Diamond Jubilee Gardens may have to be moved for the development to occur. Well, what better place to come than Twickenham Riverside itself to find out what people think and speak to members of the community about their thoughts for the future. The Londoners spoke to the leader of Richmond upon Thames Council, Gareth Roberts, to ask why the development was taking place.
At the moment, Diamond Jubilee Gardens is underutilised. I think most people will recognise that. It's quite isolated. If you go in there on most days, you won't find many people in there. But what we're proposing is a bigger Diamond Jubilee Gardens, the better Diamond Jubilee Gardens, something which is going to be really at the heart of this development. It's not going to be shunted off into the sidelines, which some people would hope for. We want to make sure that this is going to be, give it the opportunity to shine, which it really could do with a bit of investment. We're not taking money away from anything to allocate it to this development. We are just doing what every borough does in terms of regeneration money. We're allocating money. There may be some borrowing taken into account, but there's been so much money spent over the decades trying to find the right solution. So the question everybody has to ask is, if not this, then what else and how much will that cost? This is fully costed, and more importantly, the people of Twickenham have seen it, people of Richmond Borough have seen it, and they've told us this is what they want.
The Londoners also spoke to Ted Crennan, a volunteer with the Twickenham Riverside Trust, a group which opposes the development.
Can you just talk to us a bit about what the Twickenham Riverside Trust does?
Sure, we're a charity. So we were established 10 years ago when the council granted us a lease for 125 years on the public open space of the Diamond Jubilee Gardens, as you can see across the river. And our objective is to protect, preserve and enhance those gardens, the riverside and its environments for the benefit of the public. And we believe that Twickenham Riverside is a jewel, it's beautiful. And the river itself and the public open space alongside has been really important for people's both physical and mental well-being. The council planned to build a 5-storey, 21-metre tall block of private flats on this Twickenham Riverside. It sits on a podium. The podium itself is a 2.5-metre podium that starts from here, so close to the river. And on top of that 2.5-metre podium, there then extends an 18-metre tall 5-storey building within such close proximity to the river. And that building extends all the way back through the public's open space that is currently occupied by the Diamond Jubilee Gardens and a children's playground, much loved by local nurseries, schools, parents playing with their kids. And the council are proposing some exchange land which on a professional survey has come back and said it is less advantageous to the public. What's interesting is that the council claim that the main benefit of this scheme is to remove parking from the Riverside. As you can see, a lot of parking here at the moment. Now, what they don't say is that the removal of parking has zero dependency, does not rely at all on this £50 million building scheme. In fact, the council have had permission and approval 2 years ago to remove the parking from the Riverside, yet they have not done so. Instead, they wrap it up into a benefit of a £50 million scheme on which it does not depend at all.
And obviously we're surrounded by a lot of birds here today. What are the environmental concerns you have specifically?
So the environmental impact is alarming. So 65 of the 66 established trees, they're going to be chopped down. There is 200 metres squared, more than that, of mature canopy that will be lost. 90 plus metres of native hedgerow that will be lost. These are huge environmental concerns, and their loss doesn't speak to a greener borough.
The Twickenham Riverside Trust say the council has spent £7 million acquiring the land and £4.5 million on architects. The trust also argue the proposed exchange land is not as advantageous as the existing open space because it is not cohesive and sandwiched between buildings on different levels. This has been Noah Keefe reporting for the Londoners in Twickenham.
Thank you, Noah. Before the council begins building, they need to win the compulsory purchase order they launched. The public inquiry for this is scheduled for later in June.
And finally, a group of London-based classical musicians are on a mission to make classical music popular again. The Westminster Music Library's latest Wednesday lunchtime concert hosted the Elmore String Quartet with a record turnout of 76 people. Our reporters attended the concert to find out more.
We're here outside Westminster Music Library, where every Wednesday at 12:30 a free lunchtime concert is offered to the public. Today's performers are the Elmore String Quartet, a prize-winning young ensemble formed at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester in 2017. We came along to watch the concert today to find out more. So we're here with the Elmore String Quartet after a wonderful concert, and I have Felix, Xander, Anisha and Pius here to answer some questions about today. First question, how did you enjoy the concert today?
Well, it was great. It was our first run of the program, so it was a bit terrifying, of course, but it went well, and the audience was lovely, and the atmosphere here is great, so yeah, fantastic.
And you formed at the Royal Northern College of Music in 2017. Where have you been performing since then, and how did you become involved in the concert today?
We mainly started playing in and around Manchester, and then since then it's expanded throughout the rest of the country, and Anisha, our violist, is currently doing a Masters at the Royal Academy in London, so we're based in Manchester as a quartet, but we spent a lot of time to and from Manchester and London, and we just recently spent our first days together abroad in Germany in Heidelberg for a competition.
And why do you think it's important to perform at free daytime concerts like today?
So we think that as people who are very privileged and doing classical music, it's very important to not give back to the community, but to share what we have and all the opportunities we have. We'd be very grateful for them. We really enjoy performing, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And how can more young people become involved in classical music?
Performances like today are a really great way to introduce younger people to classical music. Classical music is obviously quite daunting to lots because it's held in very prestigious venues, and lots of people don't feel it's very accessible. So to kind of bring it to a more friendly environment where it's more relaxed, and obviously like today free, I think it's a really good way to get more young people to start experiencing classical music. Yeah.
What more can venues, concert halls and organisers do to facilitate events like this?
Unfortunately, we do need money to survive, and we do not have sponsors, so we have to. We can't play free concerts all the time. If people who have the wealth would invest and sponsor events like this, support places who host concerts like this, then I guess there would be more opportunities for people to listen and for us to play.
How do you think that lunchtime concerts like this and listening to classical music in the middle of the day helps break up the working day and maybe beat the January blues.
Especially somewhere in like Westminster, most people work in offices, and this area is full of people who work 9 to 5. So it is really nice that it's like a lunchtime. It's literally the break. You can come and listen, and I think people don't realise how much they listen to music or even classical music in the car, or like in an advert on TV or something. So I think it's good for the soul.
Do you have any other concerts coming up?
We've got quite a few in Manchester, but we have 2 more in London, and those are 26th of January and 19th of February, and they're both on our website, which is elmorestringquartet.com.
Westminster Music Library is one of the largest public music libraries in the UK and was founded in 1948. It hosts weekly concerts, voice recitals, chamber music and jazz sessions featuring London's most promising musicians. While the concerts are free, many attendees choose to donate to the library to support future events. So there we have it, the biggest ever audience for a Westminster Music Library concert. The Elmore String Quartet had a wonderful time, and so did we. If you'd like to come along, the concerts happen for free every Wednesday lunchtime at 12:30 at Westminster Music Library. This is Georgina Finley reporting for the Londoners.
So, Theo, do you fancy popping down to a classical concert next lunchtime?
I could be convinced to go, to be honest. It sounds like a good way to de-stress after doing a bit of work. That's all for now. Thank you for tuning in to the Londoner News.
For all your latest London news, visit our websites SW Londoner, SE Londoner, NW Londoner and nelondoner.co.uk, or follow us on Twitter using the handles below. From all of us at the Londoners, goodbye.